Okay. Well, Mr. CW, thank you for being here. I know you're our coroner in Bibb County, and I know that you have been very involved in this, and I know you've had a passion for it. And I would like to mention also Scott Cox, our former coroner. He was involved in this death that we had there, our missing boy in Bibb County. And he did actually the exhumation of the body. He exhumed the body and was able to retract or extract the DNA that was used, I think, to allow this to occur. So I want to thank you, but if you will, CW, would you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this and where it was allowed you to take it to these people that have done such a marvelous job of getting this DNA done?
Absolutely. So back in November of last year, Miss Colleen Fitzpatrick, she reached out to me by phone, and she stated that she was very interested in this case. The main issue was that we didn't know where the archives were. I remember back when Scott Cox was in office and right after he exhumed the body, he mentioned that he sent them to North Texas. I didn't know what university it was or anything, but Miss Colleen Fitzpatrick, she jumped right on it. She knew exactly where they were. She reached out to the university, and they had to send them back to me, and I had to give them permission to do that. So when I got them, I sent them off to out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Colleen, but I believe that they got a deal there called tissuealizer, where they pulverize the bone and then they send them off to California. So she's been kind of keeping in contact with me throughout the months, and keeping me updated throughout the whole process during this investigation. And Miss Colleen, if you will, you can kind of go from there and tell us what was all involved in that investigation there.
Miss Colleen, would you do that, please? Thank you.
I will. Now I want to say I did talk to CW early on, and you may read in the paper different cases are solved, and you may get the impression that, you know, boom, you get the DNA, it's solved, right? It's exciting. But really, behind that, it's a process, and it does take a village. It takes people like CW who are interested, willing to work with us. It takes, I'm the founder of Identifinders. We do John and Jane Doe cases. We solve violent crimes using genealogy. But you know, it takes. I'm really the DNA guru in the family here, so it takes not only people like CW and like myself to kind of shepherd the whole case through, but you know, it takes genealogists, Misty Gillis and Ellison Peacock. It takes the people at the lab who were very thoughtful in telling us the issues and helping us make decisions, because you know, this wasn't a slam dunk. This DNA was 60 years old, and you know, DNA degrades. It was in bad shape. And I want to say that when I contacted the University of North Texas, they had to go back in their archives. That took several weeks, and they came back and they said, yeah, we have the 3 teeth and we have one piece of the tibia, which is in your foot or your leg, and we tried to get DNA out of it, and we got absolutely nothing. Are you sure you want me to send this back to CW? Are you sure you want to work with this? And we said, yeah, of course, we want to try it. And so the end of it was when we got it sent to Salt Lake City, like CW explained, you have to take that, ground it to a powder. Then we sent it to a specialty lab out in California called Estrella. And they specialize in very tough cases like this. They use the same kind of DNA processing that they use for mummies. It's called ancient DNA, where, you know, it's not fresh DNA. You have to have special handling and stuff. And they got, we usually use 1 nanogram, and they got 45 times the amount of DNA we normally use. I mean, it was like, it would be equivalent to a 55-gallon drum of DNA in our world. And that came from the teeth. And from the tibia, they got 5.5 nanograms. So we had plenty to work with. So that was good news. But then as it went into the lab, they always do a little bit of diagnostics up front to make sure the DNA is in good shape and everything. And then to our surprise, it was only 40% human. So that was another challenge that we discussed with the lab, and they told us different ways that they would suggest getting around that and making it useful anyway. And that worked out. I mean, that was kind of a tough situation there. And then finally, when we got, that through the lab and we got it through bioinformatics, all the steps we normally go through, we got genealogy data. And that's when we could really start the genealogy process. Now, before I turn it over to Misty to explain, I do want to share my screen and show you the samples we had to work with, if you don't mind.
Please do.
You have disabled sharing, so if you could enable me to share my the images of the teeth and the tibia, I will do that. The host has to enable me to share, if that's okay, wherever Mike is. Mike, you there? Hello, Mike. Hoping that he will allow me. If you can allow me, okay, if we can allow me to share my screen, I'd like to show the audience the samples we had to work with.
Did that do it?
Nope. Just click the next door to the share screen. There's like a little arrow and it says allow participants to share.
I got it. I think you're on now.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to click to share and oh, there it is. Okay, hang on, people. I'll show you. I think this is it. Yeah, if y'all can see that. This is a picture of the femur, part of the femur of his leg bone that we had to work with. Let me see if I can get it to advance. This is a picture of the 3 teeth. Now, this happened in 2016. Thanks to the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children. They sponsored an exhumation. And at that time, the 3 teeth and the tibia were saved from the exhumation. The body was immediately buried again, but they saved these samples and they sent it to Texas. And Texas, wasn't able to make anything of it because of the degradation. Here's both of them. The tibia is on the right and the 3 teeth are in the tube on the left. So they, did the same thing. They got the bone powder, they got DNA from it, but it was so bad they couldn't work with it. But since 2016, technology has definitely advanced. So we were absolutely going to take a chance. So this is what arrived at our lab in Salt Lake City that we work with. It's not our lab. We work with Intermountain Forensics. They ground it down. Tissuelizer allows, when they're grinding, to keep things cold so that the DNA has less damage. And then once they had the powder, they sent it to Astrea for the ancient DNA analysis. And like I said, that's really similar to what they use on mummies. So, we felt very confident in their abilities, and they produced 45 times the DNA we thought, we'd get. So anyway, I thought you'd like to see just those small bits of what was left of the boy that we were able to use. Now, getting it all through, I tell you, there was a lot of challenges. It wasn't a slam dunk. It took a year. And you have to have patience with these things. You have to make careful decisions. But once we got to that genealogy, then I'm going to turn it over to Misty because she did a bang up job, unbelievable genealogist. And she was the one that really came upon that, along with Allison Peacock. They pulled every trick in the book to get Danny's name back to him. So I'll turn that over to Misty now. I'll stop sharing and she can tell you the rest of the story.
Hello, my name is Misty Gillis. I'm the senior forensic genealogist that was assigned to the case. Once we got the data into the 2 databases that we could use, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, we had some 2nd to 3rd cousin matches that popped up on our match list. What was particularly troubling about this case was that a majority of the 2nd to 3rd cousin matches that we came across were non-paternity events. A non-paternity event is when you are not 100% sure of your lineage. Maybe your father is not the father you suspected it was. Your grandfather is not the grandfather you suspected he was. We were able to figure out those NPEs and identify who their actual biological family members were. And that brought us to a specific family in New York and New Jersey. And I was working on that family for quite a while when I called Allison in for help, because I couldn't figure out how we ended up with a boy being in Alabama and a family from New York and New Jersey. Through a lot of investigative work, we were able to determine that one branch of the family did end up moving down south to Miami, and a descendant of that family ended up marrying in Alabama, and I reached out to a grandchild of that couple. The grandchild referred me to her father, who actually lived in Germany and was 80 years old at the time. I called him and we had a very interesting conversation. I explained what was going on with the tree and what we were looking for, and told him, Danny's story essentially. And he's the one that said to me, I don't believe I can help you except for my cousin Danny. And I said, tell me a little bit more about Danny. And he said, well, Danny had braces on his legs. Now, previously to me actually getting into the genealogy on the case, Gray Hughes, who funded the case, had sent me an FBI bulletin about our John Doe. And it had explained that during his autopsy, they discovered he may walk with a slight limp. So the leg braces part stuck out to me and was very helpful. He explained to me that his cousin Danny had ran away, that he was a couple years younger than he was. The cousin was born in 1943, so the timeline lined up. So we started digging into who could Danny be. And he told us it was a child of his Aunt Ginny and his Uncle Jim. So Allison and I started hitting public records and marriage indexes in Florida, and we came across a Virginia in this family that married a Jim. But it turns out prior to marrying Jim, she had married an Alfred Armantrout. And the cousin in Germany, Robert, had told me that there were 3 boys in this family. There was Danny, David, and Donald. We found Donald and we found David on the census living with Alfred Armantrout and Ginny, which was Virginia Burner. But Danny was not on there because he had not been born yet. So we started going through newspaper archives and we looked for birth announcements to the Armantrout couple. And that's where we came across Daniel Paul Armantrout, born December 28th, 1945. In doing this, we decided we needed to track down his siblings so we could verify the story, so we could, make sure we were on the right track. Allison and I pretty much hit the ground for days straight trying to track down where Donald or David could be. We could not find David, which we now know that he is currently missing as well, as he ran away from the home. But we did track down Donald. And in speaking with Donald, he told us about Danny. Danny had polio as a child, which contributed to the reason why he had a limp. His father was in the service, which also explains why Danny was found with the United States Army ring in the vehicle when the vehicle had crashed. His family was also Catholic, which lined up with him wearing the Immaculate Conception medal as well. After speaking with Donald, we decided to take the FBI bulletin photos, which were untouched morgue photos of Danny. And I sent it to him and explained that although this is a sensitive and upsetting photo to see, we need you to verify whether this is David or this is Daniel. And within seconds, he called me back and said, that is my brother Daniel. And I sent the photo to the cousin Robert in Germany as well. And he sent me back a message immediately saying that is my cousin Daniel. And so that is how we came to this. And it was, a much more long involved story that I'm not going to bore you with, hours of details, but without Allison's help, I don't think I would have been able to solve this in the time that I did it. And her contribution was immense to the team. And I'm just very honored to be able to have been a part of this.
That is awesome. And I think, Dr. Fitzpatrick, I think you wanted to chime in here. Is that correct?
Yeah, I said it took a village, and I mentioned, I got kind of describing what happened between November when I called CW and September when we got the genealogy going. But I want to mention special thanks to Gray Hughes, whose YouTube channel financed this, because it was tricky and it took more funds than we thought. And without Gray, we never would have had the money to do this. So I want to emphasize how thankful we are for his kindness and the kindness of his subscribers in bringing Danny back to his family, reuniting him after 60 years. So special thanks to Gray Hughes.
May I ask a question of you professionals that were involved in this? And it's really fascinating for me to hear how you were able to go through and make these accomplishments. I think it's a modern miracle. It's certainly a technological miracle. but it's amazing to me what y'all have accomplished. I'm just fascinated with it. Can you tell me, I have heard or seen online that this particular case is the oldest recovery of a lost child in American history, or maybe perhaps even in the world. Would that be a correct statement?
I think the answer is I do know it's the oldest case solved with genetic genealogy through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's the oldest case solved through this method. Now, I don't know if it's the oldest case ever solved through NCMEC. I don't know. But as of today, 1961 is the record for them. Now, records are made to be broken, and I happen to know we're going to break it soon, but as of today, we should be very, very proud of this. It's a very difficult case, and we did it. And thanks to the National Center for, sponsoring the original exhumation, because we wouldn't have those teeth and bone if they hadn't done that.
Well, to you professionals that have done this, let me extend to you a hearty thank you for all the work you've done. It's absolutely amazing. I would like to take us now for a moment to the local folks that I find amazing, because I know these people, I know what they've done, and I have known them for quite some time, and the work that they have done has also kept this story alive. I'd like to introduce somebody I didn't introduce a while ago. The gentleman you see on screen right now is a friend of mine. This is our Centreville mayor. This is Mike Oakley. Mike, hello.
How is everybody?
Well, thank you for being here, because I'm going to come back to you, because we've got some kinships here I want to talk about too, just briefly. Okay. But for right now, we've heard from CW. I'd like to go to Sheriff Jody Wade and ask Jody if he would to tell me how he got involved in this and how he first heard that there was something going on in this area that allowed him to make me aware of it at the Centreville Press. Jody, can you tell us how you got involved in this story and how we arrived at this point?
Well, when I first moved to Bibb County back in 1997, I'd heard stories about the missing boy, and I'd talked to Jim Oakley on several occasions about it because it was very interesting to me. And he was able to fill me in on the history and what led up to him being buried at a Centreville Memorial Cemetery. I talked to several people that lived in the county, and they were telling me about it and what their thoughts were and how they felt at the time it happened. And that they were very concerned about trying to determine who he was and notifying any of his family members that may remain so that they could have some closure. My main involvement was at the exhumation in 2016 when I assisted with removing Danny and retrieving some of the remains to send those and have those analyzed. We got word that there was nothing found in the initial DNA testing that they did. Later, the middle of October, CW called me and told me that he thought perhaps that they'd been able to identify the remains and locate the family members that may still be alive. I found out Saturday, October 30th, that they had located a family member and absolutely 100% confirmed his identity. So most of the credit with this goes to the people you mentioned, Gray Hughes and Identifinders International and Athena, I'm saying it incorrectly, Forensics, CW West, and most of all, Jim Oakley, who initially documented this story and followed it. And going through the archives, the majority of the information that we were able to find locally was because of the hard work and dedication of Jim Oakley as his time as a reporter with the Centreville Press.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jody, because you did a perfect lead into the fellow I want to talk to. I admire the technology that these professionals have done. It's again, I'm just going to call it a miracle because I don't have any other way to describe what has happened. But I think there's another miracle here. And he's sitting in the middle of this threesome that we've got on screen right now. A fellow that I met, I moved to Bibb County in 1978. And one of the things I became aware of real quick was a fellow named Jim Oakley, who was the publisher and editor of our local paper, the Centreville Press. And he was sitting in the seat I'm sitting in today, which even makes me more appreciative of Jim, because he told me the other day when I asked him, I said, Jim, tell me what I need to know to run a newspaper in a small town like Centreville, Alabama. He said one thing. He said, keep the doors open. And I think that's pretty wise statement from Jim. Jim, I want to turn this over to you for a minute because I want to hear from one of my heroes here, because when I came here in 1978, I kept seeing in the paper on a fairly regular basis this promotional that you were doing of making people aware and keeping people cognizant of the fact that we had a missing boy in this community. And somewhere out there, you kept telling folks in different articles, in different opinion pieces, that there was someone out there that knows who this boy is. And can you tell us how you first became involved in this story? And then if you would share why and how you were able to carry this story on here for 60 years to allow this thing to come to a conclusion that is so joyful and so amazing. Let me turn it over to Mr. Jim Oakley, one of my heroes. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, David. I don't know about a hero, but I started with this thing at the hospital. I had gone to the hospital to cover a wreck for the paper. It was not this one, it was another one, but I happened to be back there in the back of the hospital at the emergency room. And they came in and said there'd been a bad wreck at the Riverbend Bridge. They'd run off the bridge, and they thought they had one fatality, and the driver of the car was the one there in the hospital at this time. So I've forgotten his name, but he is since deceased, I think.
James White, I believe, Jim.
What's that?
James White, I believe.
That's right, exactly. I stayed with that the rest of the night, and the rest of 60, that started a 60-year story that I stayed with. From that night in the hospital, went up to Riverbend and determined that there was a body in a car underwater, under the bridge. The bridge was wooden then, and it had become slick, and I'm sure he slipped, the driver, Mr. White, slipped off the bridge, ran over the side down in the water, and he survived, the boy didn't. And then we started from there. They had some divers come in and retrieve his body, and that started it. He went to he was scared of the local funeral home, Jack Lee Funeral Home then, and Jack and Pat Lee took care of him and bombed him and put him on display over there. And the word got out that we had this fatality over the news. And the next few days, next few weeks rather, next couple of weeks, people filed in long lines over there to view the body at the funeral home. At one time, we thought we had struck gold. We thought we had the mother over there. She made 3 appearances, 2 one day and 1 the next day. She stayed overnight in a motel here and came back the next day, but no explanation. She cried at the casket, and one fellow came in, had a heart attack there, viewing the casket, and turned out, well, he survived, but turned out there was no relation to our young boy here. But we had all that going on, and then through the years, then we kept an interest going. We had a lot of newspaper, TV, radio copy that left here and became worldwide, as a matter of fact. I got letters at the press from people in foreign countries who had most of them had connections here years ago. They want to know where he was and what was going on, what happened, and so forth, so forth. Thousands of questions. Then after I sold the press and moved on to teach at the University of Alabama, I didn't turn this thing loose. I stayed with it, but I held on as long as there was a line, just a thread, something that might happen. And I was excited when the word came out a few years ago that they might could extract some remains to send out to Texas, to this North Texas University. Maybe they could identify him. So, of course, that just renewed the interest all over the place again. And people became very excited, stayed excited until that kind of played out. Then I didn't hear anything for a long time. until not too many weeks ago, a month or so ago, that the word was that his remains at that time had been shipped somewhere else, and they were starting a different process, different procedure. And then boom, the next thing I knew, they had a name and address and so forth. So that brings us to date. It's been a long time, 60 years, but I can remember every event. I'm so thankful for that. At my age of 85, 86, I can remember every event through the years. And I'm so glad that this came to fruition during my lifetime. I was a pallbearer at his first funeral, and my grandson, Pate, was a pallbearer at his second burial. And we put him away, and the people here in Bibb County put him away in first class shape. Good casket, good vault, flowers, pastor, pallbearers, the whole shoot match, service, funeral service. And we did him right. I'm proud of that. I'll never forget that. So we're gonna, when we find out what his brother wants to do, my hope is that he'll let us put some kind of a monument over there with his name on it and so forth, and bring it up to date. That's our next project, as far as I'm concerned.
Can I interrupt here?
Yes, sir. Let me tell you, Jim, I appreciate what you've done. And I think Miss Colleen wanted to also mention, JW, CW, I wanted to let you know that Miss Colleen is, Miss Fitzpatrick is asking us to also mention that Daniel has a brother that's also still missing. So as we get into this, let's do this if we may. Jim, thank you for what you did. You kept this story alive. And Bibb County has an attachment to this young man that none of us knew, that's gone on for 60 years. And we're seeing the end of the story here. And I'm very thankful for you being the man who was over the Centreville Press and a leader in this community that kept this community moving in the right direction to see this story come to an end. Thank you. CW, you got the floor, bro.
You don't mess me up.
I couldn't help it, CW.
I was just going to say that I did talk with a brother yesterday, and we're going to have a memorial service December the 28th, and it happens to be on his birthday.
Awesome. Well, we've got a little slide that we're going to put up at the end of this that Mike's going to put up. I want to give the mayor one chance to speak. Now, hey, Jim, you don't know this guy that's mayor now, do you?
I vaguely know him, yeah.
Well, he ain't the first time there's been an Oakley be the mayor of this town, has he?
That's exactly right.
All right, Mike, how about you tell us what's going on for the city here?
Hey, first of all, on behalf of the city, we want to thank everybody involved in giving this young man a name. And I say young man because in 1961, I was 4 years old. My brother was 3. My sister was 2 years ETA. So we literally grew up with him, although we didn't know his name. And I'd like to say that Bibb County is the county, and Centreville is a city that never forgot and never gave up. I think y'all can hear from the emotion in David, your voice, and my dad, how close we are to this case. We're so happy to have this case resolved. I really want to thank my dad, he loves forensic shows, the NCIS and all that stuff. And that's really when he saw that, he reached out, I think it was to Scott Cox then, and said, hey, with all this new stuff, is there any way we could get this going? And it kind of went from there. Gladys Powell, we used to call her Mama Powell, she would put flowers on his grave every year on the anniversary of his death. And we also need to thank former coroners Mike Nichols and Scott Cox, as well as our current coroner CW West, who y'all have been listening to and seeing for staying the course. Imagine, and I'm a parent, I think all of us are parents here on this broadcast. But imagine losing your son and finding out that 60 years later, complete strangers found him and cared for him. Really is a touching story, and it goes beyond uh, the friendliness that we're known for, the friendliness, Southern hospitality, and that we will be here for you no matter what. But listen, I want to thank everybody involved with this. It's so exciting. It's emotional. Uh, I feel like I had, growing up, we would always ride our bikes down to the cemetery and we would look at the picture of Danny that my dad stood on the exam table in the funeral home, took pictures, and went out all over the nation to try to identify him. So we always knew what this young man looked like, although we didn't know his name. And it's just phenomenal to me that we've come full circle this many years later using science, technology, and sure stick to it and pure stick to itness and never quit and a can-do attitude. I love it. So on behalf of the city of Centreville, I am proud to say that not only my dad, but my granddad, David, who was mayor until 1972 when he died, were involved in this. And we're all so very happy that we've got this song. We cannot wait to meet his brother in December.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And I want to let you know that I've got a beat that just came in here, said that we needed to hear from Gray. Who is it, Josh?
Mr. Gray Hughes with his YouTube channel. I believe he is on the Zoom call here with us.
Okay, I don't see him on my screen. That's why I didn't recognize him. Well, let's let that go ahead, Josh, if you would. Mr. Gray Hughes, would you like to speak to us, sir?
Oh, yes, I'm here. I had everything on mute, so I didn't want to interrupt the show or anything like that. But
well, thank you. I know who you are. I saw your video. Now I know who we're talking to.
yeah, well, I mean, it's just been one of the greatest feelings that I can't even just say in my true crime YouTube channel, just in my life, really, to have been part of funding. Actually funding the identification. And it's just, I remember it was like, I've known Colleen for a couple of years, and then eventually I said, I'd like to fund, some of these in these small counties where there isn't a lot of funding, maybe help fund some of the John Does or any, criminal cases that they don't have an identity. And we were just talking for a long time. And then eventually she said, hey, how about this one? And I said, let's do it. Right. So, it's just been absolutely incredible. Like Colleen comes on to my show, pretty frequently. And every single person that watches is just mesmerized by her, just all of her stories and things that she knows and stuff like that. And they're, I think identifinders should get as, way more credit out there than people realize. They're really nimble with data. Like some places, they just kind of put it in, up, didn't work. Shoot. Well, we'll move on to the next one. Well, they'll sit there and keep massaging, working with the data until they finally get the results that they need. And they put in, just go the extra mile. So it's just been incredible working with them. And when I say work with it, just funding, and then we talk and I kind of know what's going on from time to time, but I'm not doing any of the genealogy. But man, it's been really emotional. Even, just for me, just listening to other people explaining how they feel and just kind of imagining how the brother feels right now to finally have an answer. And now there's a full story surrounding his brother. There's like this all these things that went on for all these years is now part of the story. And Danny has a really interesting story around his life. And it's just incredible. So
it is, sir. And I want to thank you for the channel that you run, because if it hadn't been for your channel and the work that you're doing with these professionals here, I don't know that we would be sitting here today celebrating the success that we're seeing here, and Bibb County getting some joyful news about this story that we've had for 60 years in our community. So I want to say thank you to you very much, sir. I'd also like to point out that we've got a number of news media that are online with us apparently at this time. And Josh, you may know more of them than I do. If there are anyone on here from the mainstream media or from any of our local media that would like to chime in and ask a question, I'd ask you please to keep it as brief as possible, and let them also have a chance to maybe clear up something or ask a question that I haven't thought about. So go ahead with that, Josh, if you would.
Yes, I believe we have at least one member on here from WVUA. WVUA, are you with us right now? And you may be on mute, by the way.
Which one, which ID is she, Josh?
This was a gentleman, and it was from WVUA. I believe they were on the call here. But they may be muted, so check the participant list.
Well, I don't know which one it is.
Okay, I will check. Give me a moment.
All right, if you find it, let me know, Josh. But let me mention to everybody before we wind up here, there's going to be a slate up here at the end of this program that will be talking about a fundraiser that we want to do to try to come up with something to complete the things that CW had mentioned. So don't go and just drop off at the end. Take a look at this slate and look at the things we're talking about. I think you'll find that we're still wanting to put a final touch on this package of miracles, is what I'll call it, to give us one more chance to show how Bibb County really feels about people. And even if we don't know who they are, there's an extension to these. And Mr. Gray, I hope that these things will encourage you professionals and yourself, Mr. Hughes, to continue on. I think that you've pulled miracles out of the air and made it happen because you've got a passion for what you do. And
David,
I appreciate you and admire what you've done.
David, can I say one more word?
Sure, Jim, why not?
The picture on that tombstone over there, it's probably the fifth or sixth one that's been there, but it's the original, or a copy of the original. And others, there's been a number of them stolen, especially right after it was over. For the first few years. I made that picture that night. They brought his body to the Jack Lee Funeral Home that night. And I stood on the slab and made his picture with a Polaroid camera. For those of you who don't know what a Polaroid is, minute developed outfits, old fashioned, out of date. But I made that picture because I had, we were in a hurry to get identification out. And all I had was film to be developed and prints made and this, that, and the other. It took some time, but Polaroid, we had a sheriff's deputy standing by at the funeral home to carry that picture to the Birmingham News, to the sports department. There was a man up there named Phil Neal, who was a sports artist. And I had called him and he said, get the picture up here and I'll see if I can figure out what his eyes were going to look like or would look like. So we sent that Polaroid up there, and I think he made a picture or two and played with it and came up with what's on the tombstone. And that's the only picture we had over these years. And we use that on printing circulars and flyers and send it out all over the place. Of course, we didn't have much television then, and we didn't have any internet and those fancy methods we have now of getting information out. If we had, we'd have probably solved this thing in a couple of hours, but we mailed out thousands of those things here from the Centreville Press Office to Sheriff's Department, to Chambers of Commerce, to mayor's offices all over this part of the country. And with this picture on it, a brief description of what happened and so forth. And that's it. So that's the story of the picture on the tombstone.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
Hey, David, could I say one last thing?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I was just going to say that on my, I feel really blessed on my YouTube channel because it's not, I wouldn't be able to even do the funding if it wasn't for the people that are watching and supporting what I do. And so that's the whole thing. It's like, I'm the channel, but it's we call ourselves the freaks. I'm gonna say it out there live on, but it's just amazing how supportive they are. And I think we're already almost done with the funding of a third case. They're still working on those. So we're just going to keep on going because the it's so valuable to have these Jane and John Does identified and give their names back. I didn't realize how great that would feel until this case. I mean, it's like I kind of got chills right now in my arms. So there you go. So thanks for letting me say that last part.
Absolutely. I appreciate you too, sir. And I appreciate the work that y'all have done. I appreciate everybody here that's participating in this Zoom forum, this video forum. The technologies that we've got at our disposals open up new areas for us to be able to do things that have not been done before. Josh, I want to turn this over to you for a minute, and you speak your piece on what you've got for other media that may be involved here. And then I want to ask everybody that's watching this, stand by and read the slate at the end, because we've got some additional information for you. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. David. Mr. Drew Taylor, it looks like you're muted. You want to unmute your mic and see if we can hear you, please? Or actually, maybe Mr. Hobson, you may have to unmute him. This is going to be Drew Taylor on the participant list.
I can't unmute him. He's got to do it himself.
Can y'all hear me?
Nope,
Yeah.
I can't
Yes,
now.
sir.
If you can go ahead and state the outlet you're with as well, please.
Terrific. Yeah, well, for those of you who know, I'm Drew Taylor with CBS 42 in Birmingham, and I gotta say, Mr. Oakley, it's good to see you again, sir. It's been a long time, but
Good to see you, Drew.
well, I think even Ryan Phillips could probably relate to this. You know, I've heard about this case for a long time. I even visited the memorial sometimes when I go back to Centreville, and I know one aspect of it has been sort of this aspect of sort of this, an unsolved mystery and a tragedy, really. Just the fact of no one knowing who this kid was, and just so many questions that went for this. Now that there's been some sort of closure, I think this would be a good question for a lot of the people who live there. I guess what would you hope that this monument can mean now that there's, even though it's still a tragedy, but that there's finally some sense of closure for a lot of people who've had so many questions for so long.
I would direct that to Jim Oakley.
David, I could barely hear that.
Well, he's asking.
I heard it.
Go ahead, Drew.
I was just asking, I guess, do you feel like the sense of this memorial has changed now that there's a little bit of closure? Because for a long time, there was this sense of tragedy and sort of unanswered questions. But I guess, what do you hope that this new monument or this new remembrance can mean now that we know who Danny is?
I couldn't understand what
Mr. David, can you restate the question, please, or Mr. Hobson?
He's basically saying, Jim, what do you think this new monument will accomplish as far as maybe encouraging or the influence that it may have on this story, since it is a significant story? What do you think it's going to mean for the future that we've been able to see this accomplished here in Bibb County, and we're putting some effort in this monument? What do you think people are going to think about this in the future?
Well, I think the biggest thing we could do is convey to the world that we love children here in Bibb County, and though this was not one of our children, we adopted him, as it says on the monument over there, and we raised the money, buried him in a nice casket, nice vault, full funeral procession, flowers and so forth. And we'll probably put something about that on the monument. Dedicated, I don't know, somebody will come up with some wording about the love we have here in Bibb County for young people.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. And I'm going to end this on this note, if I may. There are no insignificant people. There are no people that have no worth. We're all God's creatures. And each one of us recognizes the value of each one's life. And this is just a statement upon which we all, I think, can hang our hats. God created us all, and we all have value. And we're valuable to one another. And I'll end on that, and I'll ask you to be blessed. God bless you all.
Wait a minute,
Thank you
Mr.
for all
David,
that y'all have done.
Now, David, we still have a couple questions. Do we have Mr. Steve from WVUA with us in the participant list? And you also may be muted. For Mr. Steve Dorio.
He's still on there, but he's got to unmute his mic.
Okay, so if there is anybody else, there's a chat on Zoom. So if you do want to speak out, this is your chance. Just go ahead and let me know who you are with your media outlet down in the chat, so we can make sure you get your chance to ask before we adjourn here.
And thank you, Josh, for being the technical guru on all this.
No worries at all.
Hey, David. Hey, David.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, Mike.
This is Mike. I'm just waiting for the made-for-TV movie to come out. This has all the makings of a phenomenal movie of a town that never forgot about a family.
I want John Wayne to play me now, Mike.
You would be awesome. You're only 40 years too late.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I'd like to make a comment that
Absolutely.
couple of comments. First, my feeling is the stone is for Danny to show, I think that's what we can hope for, to be buried under our own name. He was separated. He was a victim of an accident, separated from his family, from his loved ones. And this gives him back his identity, his own name. And I think that's what we can all hope for. And he was deprived of that for so long. So that's the treasure for me. It's not so much a glory for the community. I do recognize all the efforts and the care. And really, I worked for Danny, and I think our crew, Misty, Allison, we worked for Danny, and I'm very happy about that. And if you think about the power of genealogy, there was really, of the 7 billion people in the world, there was only 2 that could have identified him, as people, like his parents are gone. And it was the middle brother, Donald. He could identify him, and there was a cousin in Germany. And of all the people in the world, we found those 2 people that could tell us who he was. I mean, really, besides the genealogy, could confirm it. And in closing, just to leave you with a mystery, because there were 3 brothers, not 2. And there was an older brother, David, and in searching for him, he disappeared too after Danny disappeared. And we don't know what happened to him. Donald has not heard from him since about the early 60s. And the latest we've find any record of him is in Lee County, Florida in 1963. Donald tried to find him because he had a social security number, and he tried to trace him that way. Nothing came of it all these years. He couldn't find Danny because Danny was too young for a social security number. There's no way that he could find Danny, or Danny could find, the whole community here could find the brother. We've solved that. But now there's still an open mystery for us to consider, and that has what happened to David, the older brother. Is he out there as a John Doe? It's very unusual for a family to have 2 brothers, that are both missing. So we'll leave that open for now.
Can I make a comment
Colleen?
about David?
Yeah, thank you. And listen, we're getting a lot of questions coming in about family members and how they might find out more information. So if you would, please give the listeners your contact information so they can contact you if they have additional news or information. Ms. Colleen, would you do that first? And then Misty will come right to you.
Okay.
Yes, the best way is to go to our website. There's a place you can contact us instead of loading people up with, phone, emails. You can go to our website at www.identifinders.com, like identity finders, identifinders.com. There's a place where you can click to contact us. The email is info@identifinders.com. And those are the 2 best ways. You can, contact us, ask questions, or if you have another case you'd like us to think about, that's the way to get to us.
Thank you, Colleen. Now, Misty, I'm going to come to you, and then I'm also going to come back to you, Gray, for you to give us your contact information if you want to make it available. Go ahead, Misty.
I just saw that there were some questions about David. So the only things we know about David is he was born David Alfred Armantrout, but he was raised under the surname Hamilton. On the record, we did find in 1963 in Lee County, Florida, he was found under the name Hamilton, but was using the alias Armantrout as well. My understanding is that when Donald, the middle brother, returned from the army in Christmas 1961, both Danny and David had already left the home by that time. So we know that he had ran away prior to probably Danny running away. That is as far as we know for any information for David. So that would answer the question Ivana asked from al.com about David.
Thank you, Misty. Go ahead, Gray, if you would.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is Gray Hughes Investigates. And then my email, which is grayhuze2@gmail.com. So sort of phonetically spelling Hughes, you know, grayhuze2@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Gray. Thank you very much. I want to extend to the family, if anybody hears and is listening to this, that your loved one did not die alone. The people in Bibb County, they were a part of us and always will be. And I want to thank everyone here. Thank you for what you've done. And I want to bid you a good day. Goodbye, folks.
Bye.
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 Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
That's us too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's us too, Jim. See you later.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
It's been a real good program.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to end it before an hour was up because I wanted to fit within an hour. Thank you, Mike.